We're back once again in what has been an eventful weekend of weather so far. So we are now transitioning into really the time frame of the afternoon here on Sunday, which is now getting into where phase 2 is. And we do have a new update to bring you here at the noon hour. A tornado watch has been issued for southeast Alabama, the panhandle of Florida, and west and southwest Georgia. But this does encompass areas really close to central Georgia. And once again, you will see right here until 7 p.m. tonight. It only encompasses Chris County, which technically is still not within the central Georgia viewing area. But if you remember yesterday during a lot of the coverage, I was saying know your county. We have a lot of border counties that are not technically our viewing area, but they have been in the past. And we get lots of reports of viewers that do watch from certain counties like Jasper and Putnam that might be maybe up in the Atlanta DMA, Upson County, which is also in the Atlanta DMA, Taylor County, which is technically in the Columbus DMA, and Chris County, which is technically down in the Albany DMA, but other areas that are really close to central Georgia that this tornado watch does include Schley County down into Sumter County. That's going to be the Americus area, Ellaville up in Schley County, getting down into Lee County, Leesburg, Georgia, and of course Lake Blackshear and Cordele down in Chris County. So all of these areas in a tornado watch, which means the conditions are suitable for possible tornado formation. This is different from a tornado warning, which oftentimes does get kind of confused with. A tornado warning means a tornado is actually happening and is beginning to form. A tornado watch means that all the ingredients are there in order for a tornado to form. So think of the watch as more of a taco bar. You have all the ingredients to make the taco, but the warning is actually going to be we're making tacos. Tacos are being made currently. So we still have the suitable conditions down to the west and the southwest of us for a possible tornado warned storm later on this afternoon all the way until we get into the evening hours. But we did just talk about it with the SPC risk. We know severe weather and weather in general does not obey these boundaries that we do give them. So it's not going to say, oh, Taylor, Macon, and Dooley counties, they're not in a tornado watch, so I can't form a tornado warm storm in those areas over to the west and the southwest. Those areas still need to be keeping a close eye on the afternoon forecast as you are right on the line of where ingredients are a lot more suitable for a potentially tornado warned storm. So that's the new update as of the noon hour, and that's really the only change with your forecast. Other than that, it continues to be a story of gloomy and maybe even a bit of a limited visibility afternoon right now. Plenty of mist showers and just some low-level cloud cover formation, which some of this precipitation may still be of the frozen nature technically. However, it's so light in nature that it's not even really popping up on our satellite and radar for the most part, and it's so light in nature, it is not going to have any impact. So very thankfully, once again, if you're just tuning in here at the noon hour, central Georgia has avoided the brunt of the impacts in terms of the winter weather risk. It is just such a crazy story. I still really even can't believe it. I looked at the crawl on TV just a second ago with that winter weather advisory still in place for counties, and then it pops up the tornado watch. So we have all of that in play here at the same time throughout your Sunday. Current visibility map shows some darker gray shades and even some areas in Bibb County down into northern Houston County, stretching up into Monroe and Jones counties. That's where your visibility is going to really be limited, and over to the west, just indicating some low-level cloud cover, maybe a couple of those mist showers, and also a patch of it over to the east. So if you are heading out and about, that's going to be one reason to, number one, take it slower on the roads. But some areas are still below that 32-degree number, and you may ask, Alex, temperatures are in the 30s and the 40s. How on earth are we going to have a suitable environment for severe weather as we go into this afternoon? Well, I'll show you that in just one second. But you can get a glimpse of what's to come because 65 the current temperature over in Montgomery, 72 down in Panama City, which also is another area outlined in that tornado watch. This kind of triangle of a much warmer air mass is going to push up into central Georgia as we go throughout the rest of today. You can see this southerly flow continuing to usher in a warmer and a much more humid air mass from the northern Gulf, and that will surge up into the southeast United States before the frontal boundary that's driving all of this active weather does pass through, and some much colder temperatures are behind it. Take a look at that 35-degree mark over in Jackson, Mississippi. That's a sign of things to come here in central Georgia as we go into tomorrow morning. And the winds are going to begin to get an uptick, so you can kind of see where they're clashing right now Right now, we still have the east and northeasterly winds, courtesy of the wedge that has ushered in that much colder air from up to the north and the northeast. But where they start to come together down here in south central Georgia already, we can see these winds down here to the south and the southwest having a bit of the southerly component to them. So that is going to continue to push those wedge winds back up to the north and the northeast. And it's not going to entirely get out of the picture here in central Georgia. Actually, if you live in Jasper, Putnam, and Hancock counties, we're not talking about a severe weather risk later on today. You guys are actually going to hold on to that cold air mass with maybe some high temperatures in the upper 30s and even the low 40s. But not the case for the rest of central Georgia. And the breezy conditions continue to make for plenty of feels-like numbers that are still well below freezing, even as low as 23 degrees up in Monticello and Eatonton, 29 in Macon, 29 in Gordon, 29 in Dublin, but already feeling like 50 degrees down there in McRae. That might be a bit of an odd temperature reading. I'm not sure if I necessarily believe that because I don't think the temperature is anywhere close to 50 degrees. So let's just do a little bit of double checking. That seems quite odd right there, but yeah, 36 degrees, just a bit of a malfunction that we're seeing down there in areas like McRae and Telfair County. But we have the likelihood of seeing some feels-like numbers close to that 50-degree mark here over the next couple of hours. But satellite and radar picture continues to be quite messy. There's a whole lot going on here in the form of cloud cover, in the form of surface level cloud cover, and those foggy skies that you're not seeing picked up by the satellite imagery, and plenty of these splotches of pink farther up to the north here in central Georgia. So that's where we are continuing to see some spotty areas and maybe a wintry mix. Maybe it's of the freezing rain nature if your temperatures at the surface are 32 or below, or it's going to be maybe even a very light and minuscule sleet shower that could be possible. So it's present in north central Georgia. Once again, the main guidance for that winter weather potential has been Macon farther up to the north. So we're seeing it scattered across Monroe County, up in Jasper County, Putnam County, down to Hancock, Washington counties, even some of that pink transitioning into some shades of green that we can see, and maybe a few splotchy areas present over in east central Georgia, just in northern Treutlen County, western Emmanuel County. Like I said, this is so light in nature that it is really having a tough time getting picked up by the radar imagery. And number two, it is not going to have any impacts in the way of freezing over widespread as it gets down to the surface. This is a very, very light shower, and most of the numbers are not below freezing temperature anymore. Then we go down to the southwest where you will see this red box outlining the tornado watch. And obviously it does stretch into areas like, say, maybe southern Macon County and into most of Dooley County, as a matter of fact. Technically, Dooley County, Macon County, you guys are not included in this tornado watch. However, you guys are right on the border of Ellaville over in Schley County, Americus down in Sumter County, getting down to Smithville and Leesburg down in Lee County. So you guys need to have your guard up later on as we go into this afternoon. But once again, this box doesn't exactly depict the counties that are outlined in that watch. We will continue to keep you updated if any other areas get added into that tornado watch later. So here's the northern edge of that line of rain beginning to move in, and you can see that it's a lot lighter in nature, more green and yellow that steadily transitions into more yellow and orange, maybe even some pockets of red as you go down to the south and southwest of Oxford. And then you can start to see some flashes of lightning down to the southwest of Montgomery amongst this line. So the southernmost component of this line is interacting with some warmer, and some more humid air. That's going to be down in southern Alabama. That's going to be down in the panhandle of Florida. In fact, if my eyes don't deceive me, we might even have a little bit of a severe thunderstorm warning right there just to the south of Mobile, maybe getting close to the Dauphin Island area on the Alabama coast. But that is what's coming. And as we start to get that warmer air mass surge up into central Georgia, we are going to have the same ingredients present as that line right now and areas in that tornado watch, especially down to the south and the southwest. But this is the southern component of this widespread winter storm that continues to dump buckets and buckets of snow across the northeast United States, getting up into the New England area, and more of a wintry mix that's still widespread across areas like upstate South Carolina, North Carolina, getting up into Virginia, West Virginia, and the back half of this line where there are colder temperatures present, more of a freezing rain and some sleet showers, continuing to move over areas like Nashville and getting down into central Mississippi, We're not looking at the backside of this line of rain rain to have any winter weather implications here in central Georgia. It is just going to be in the form of heavy showers and some possible thunderstorms. So your winter weather alerts are still standing for our northernmost counties: Washington, Hancock, Baldwin, Putnam, Jasper, Jones, Monroe, over to Lamar, Pike, Spalding, and Butts counties. These areas have not had as good of a likelihood of those possible winter weather impacts as the ice storm warning that continues to be just to the north, but we are seeing areas of northwestern Georgia get trimmed out of that ice storm warning. They had the potential for some ice accumulation up to about 1/4 of an inch, all the way to about 1 inch in nature. All we had the potential for down here in central Georgia was 1/4 of an inch of ice. Very thankfully, we didn't see any amounts of ice that were that much. Maybe a couple areas that did try to freeze over, but overall it was more just some nuisance icing. Maybe a few slick spots on the roads, but our EMA directors, even up in our northernmost counties, right on the edge of this ice storm warning, have not reported anything in the way of some slick conditions or anything in the way of power outages or some downed trees. Completely different scenario up in the metro Atlanta area, up in Gainesville, Athens. They're dealing with widespread accumulated sleet, freezing rain, some ice. Even Ansley Parker sent us a message just saying that one of her friends up in Atlanta, it was a tree that did fall over onto some cars, and every single branch on the tree was frozen solid. So that's the implications that we are looking at up in north and northeastern Georgia, and they are going to add some more rainfall onto those totals that they do see, and that rain is going to in turn freeze as we go into the overnight hours to lead to the accumulation of even more ice. And we do have the potential for seeing some freezing over of some of those wet surfaces here in central Georgia as well. So it does look like maybe some areas down here in Texas and Oklahoma have been taken out of their winter weather alerts, but we still see some as far over as maybe El Paso, Texas, getting to the south of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and going all the way up through the United States, up into the very far northeastern corner, the very tip top of Maine as it goes into Canada. So here's a look at the phases. We keep referring to these phases in terms of our weekend weather. Phase 1 has come to a conclusion. We're still seeing those spotty wintry mix showers, but overall they're not really having an impact. So I'm comfortable saying that phase 1 is already done. We're now turning our attention to phase 2, which is going to be this afternoon for that line of showers and storms. And we are going to continue to get updates as we go into this afternoon, like what we just did here at the top of the hour with that tornado watch. Phase 3, not 4-3. Phase 3, potential refreezing as we go into Monday morning. We'll talk about why that is going to be of concern as well. But let's go to the day 1 storm outlook, where most of central Georgia does have a severe weather risk. However, that tornado watch that was just issued, you're going to see it lines up almost exactly with that level 2 risk that is mainly down to the south and southwest of us, but it is clipping areas like Schley County, Sumter County, Lee County, and getting into portions of Chris County. So hence why Chris County is the only area in our central Georgia outline that got included in that tornado watch, because other areas are, for the most part, all in that level 1 risk. Not to say that the tornadoes are once again going to obey this level 2 risk and say, oh, I can't go over into Macon County. Oh, I can't go over into Dooley County if I do form. You guys are still going to be right on the edge. And like I said, you're going to want to pay close attention to any warnings that we do get throughout the rest of today as that line does push in. So the potential threats anywhere from a strong thunderstorm all the way up to a severe thunderstorm, and maybe 1 or 2 of those severe thunderstorms does have the possibility of a brief spin up tornado. That's what that tornado watch is going to be for. We're not talking about EF2, maybe long track tornadoes that are on the ground for a couple of miles. We're talking about an EF0, EF1 at the very most that briefly spin up or on the ground for a brief moment, hopefully not impacting any populated areas, more so some heavily wooded areas in this rural territory down to the south and the southwest, and then it is going to dissipate very, very quickly. But along with that, not to discount the fact that gusty winds within a severe thunderstorm warning, those can pack quite a punch too. They're of the straight line wind nature, but if we have a severe thunderstorm warning, the main driver for that severe thunderstorm warning today is going to be 58+ mile/hour winds. So if we see a severe thunderstorm warning, there are isolated gusts up to 58 or even greater miles per hour in nature. We're not looking at a hail risk, and hail is the other driver that we can have a severe thunderstorm warning issued for, but that is not looking to be the case today. So gusty winds, whether they're rotating or whether they're straight line, that's what we're going to be looking out for the rest of today. And just because you're not in the level 2 risk doesn't mean that you can't see a severe thunderstorm warning throughout the rest of today. That's That's why everyone else in central Georgia is included in that low end level 1 out of 5 risk. But like I mentioned, we are going to see a fine temperature gradient as that line begins to push in starting around 2 o'clock. 36 up in Eatonton, 66 all the way down in Cordele. So the wedge is very prominent up to the north and the northeast. In fact, even some of these showers that are still moving through have a bit of a wintry precipitation component to it as you go to the north of I-20, where there is still a much colder air mass, but that's not looking to be the case down here in our neck of the woods. So as you go farther and farther to the south and the southwest, you'll see some temperatures climbing to the 50s, the 60s, even possibly the 70s as this line does begin to move through. So in terms of the window where we do have that active weather this afternoon, what you should plan on is maybe 1 o'clock at the earliest. Better to be safe than sorry. So over the next hour, go ahead and run those last minute errands, do whatever you need to do going out and about, and make sure that you are inside. That is if you live farther over to the west. Areas like Wrightsville, Dublin, Eastman, down to Vidalia, you guys are going to see the incoming line of rain and showers and thunderstorms a little bit later into the afternoon, more so the early evening hours. But our western and northwesternmost counties going to see the entrance of this line around 2 p.m. As we go into the 3 o'clock hour, we should see this line move through areas like Macon, Warner Robins, getting to Perry, and of course areas down to the south and the southwest outlined in that tornado watch. I'm thinking around the time frame of 2 to 3, maybe even getting into 4 o'clock at the latest is going to be the window where we could possibly see a tornado warning pop up. Then we go into 4 o'clock, where this line is pushing over to areas like Dublin, Wrightsville, over to Eastman. It could be a little bit earlier than this. It could be a little bit later than this. But right now, what you need to plan on is what Future View says. Give yourself kind of an hour of cushion on each side. So 3 to 5 o'clock, I would plan on being inside where you do see maybe some orange and maybe some red that is present across south and southeast central Georgia. And then that line is beginning to push out as we go to around 6 to 7 p.m. I'm calling it 7 p.m., the end of this window for severe weather, just to be safe and cover a little bit of fluctuation, some wiggle room that we could see with this potential severe weather. So your severe weather risk ends after this initial line does push through. The backside rain that you will see, you might have some pockets of some steady and some heavy rain, but overall what we're looking at is this to mainly be just some residual rain that's continuing to add to the totals of rainfall, which is a very good thing. We are still in drought conditions. We've been in drought conditions for about 3.5 months. So any form of rain will be helpful, but it's also not going to be as intense in nature as that leading edge of the line that pushes through. And we'll hold on to some warmer numbers in the 40s and the 50s, maybe even in the 60s as we go into the early nighttime hours. But then we start to see the numbers drop after the rain pushes out. We should actually still hold on to some rain in our southeastern counties and even into the nighttime hours, maybe as late as the midnight or 1 a.m. time frame. But then cloud cover begins to clear early tomorrow morning. As that cloud cover clears right there around the sunrise window, that's when we're going to see our lowest temperatures filter in. But areas to the north and the northwest going to be much colder than areas down to the south and the southeast, which may not start out below freezing, which wouldn't be a bad thing. There will be some heavy rainfall rates associated with some of these storms, and anything that is still wet at the surface by tomorrow morning is going to freeze over very likely if you dip as low as maybe some 25s and 26s like Thomaston and Forsyth are forecast to do. Then we go into Monday afternoon. It is going to be chilly, but that's not even talking about the feels like temperatures. Those are just the actual numbers, and then your actual temperatures, as a matter of fact, going to dip into the upper teens on Tuesday morning. So here's a look at your tornado potential. This is what we have been looking at, and this is still making me kind of confident that we don't have too conducive of an environment for possible tornadic development, because we have seen some flashes of yellow and green over the last 24 hours. Those are not present anymore, but still those same areas to the west and southwest here in central Georgia. I want you to have your guard up throughout this afternoon, and even areas that are a little bit farther away from that tornado watch. Wilcox County, Telfair, Dodge, down to Wheeler, Montgomery, maybe even Lawrence County. Make sure that you're keeping your guard up. If anything pops up in the way of a tornado warning, you will be the first to know. But right now, the potential still remains fairly low, but the National Weather Service issuing that tornado watch does highlight that the potential is there. We have the conducive ingredients in order to make the taco, but right now, tacos are not definitely happening. We could go without this whole afternoon without seeing anything in the way of a potential tornado warned storm. We could see a couple severe thunderstorm warnings, and that would be it. Not trying to freak you out by any means. Continue to go about your day. Just make plans to be inside throughout this afternoon, into the evening hours, and going into around 7 p.m. because that's when the tornado watch will come to a conclusion. So quite the weather swing that we've seen from this morning and even still currently here at the noon hour and as we go into the afternoon and evening time frame. In terms of the feels like temperatures, this fine gradient is why areas down to the south and southwest are going to have a much more conducive environment for some severe weather as opposed to the winter weather, which they're still holding on to those chances in northeastern Georgia where the wedge is still holding on. But down to the south and the southwest, we see that warmer and more humid air mass surge up to the north. Then we go into Monday morning. Feels like temperatures in the mid to the upper teens. As we go into the afternoon, it's very likely not feeling above freezing temperature in most areas in central Georgia when you factor in the windy conditions. Then we go into Tuesday morning, and it should be the coldest time frame at any point throughout your 7-day forecast. Feels like numbers near 10 degrees. I wouldn't doubt that we have a couple single-digit values on the feels like temperature map as of Tuesday morning. And then Tuesday afternoon, not feeling too much better, mid-30s, dropping back down into the low 20s for what it feels like as we walk out the door on Wednesday morning. So the National Weather Service has issued a cold weather advisory. This is going to be another advisory, watch, alert that you need to be paying attention to. And many of you are probably going to walk out the door on Monday morning seeing this alert on your phone. This just means that some areas of central Georgia are going to be a little bit colder than others. Wind chill values from 0 to 15 degrees. We're going to be closer to that 15-degree value as opposed to 0. That is going to be present farther up to the north and the northwest in the state of Georgia. So it's only a slim window of about 4 hours, and not to take away from the fact that most areas in central Georgia are not included in this. Warner Robins not included in this. Milledgeville, Dublin, Cochran, down to Eastman. Not to say that you guys aren't going to be cold on Monday morning. It is still going to be frigid. So this is kind of a misleading cold weather alert right here. These values and the wind chill values are just getting kind of below 15 degrees, and that's the threshold for where we do have some cold weather alerts. It's a little bit colder than what we typically see on a winter morning. All in all, everyone just needs to bundle up as you're walking out the door and maybe crank up the heat in the car for a little bit, a couple of minutes before making your way out to work and to school. So your weekend weather takeaways. The window for wintry mix continues to close. We are now turning much of our focus, almost our entire focus, to those potential for some severe storms going into this afternoon and into the early evening hours. So 2 p.m. is going to be the earliest time frame that this line will begin to push into our west and northwestern counties. And we do have the potential for a tornado like we were talking about. That tornado watch has been issued until 7 p.m. for counties that are right on our border counties is what we like to call them, right on the edge of central Georgia. So the risk is greater down there, but just know that we have some counties here in central Georgia like Macon, Dooley, Taylor County, and down to Chris County, which is actually included in the tornado watch. All of you guys need to have your guard up throughout this afternoon. You don't see anything? Good. We don't have to deal with anything, and we don't have to talk about potential damages and such. But obviously we want you to be prepared for the worst and expect the best. As we go throughout this afternoon, it's just a forecast that's going to be downright messy at the least. You don't want to be outside for it. Spend your time inside, watch the AFC Championship game. And good news, if you are watching that AFC Championship game, if a tornado warning is going to pop up, we will be cutting in air to let you know what is exactly going to happen with a tornado warned storm. But no confirmation that that's going to occur. We do have our guard up, and we will be staffed all throughout this afternoon, keeping you posted if anything pops up. And that heavy rain associated with the thunderstorms, wet surfaces could potentially freeze back over as we go into tomorrow morning, especially up to the north and the northwest where some colder temperatures will be filtering in from. We'll continue to keep you updated for any slick spots, icy patches that we do see tomorrow morning, according to EMA directors, the GDOT website, any travel impacts that you may have throughout your Monday morning plans. We will keep you updated, but a lot of schools here in central Georgia, we have seen farther up to the north, they have elected to go ahead and cancel school, go online for Monday. That's a better decision, to be better safe than sorry. You obviously don't want your kids venturing out and about, and obviously the bus is having to drive through some icy conditions. So make sure that you're tuning into our website. 13wmaz.com has a list of all those school closures that are still occurring as you go into Monday morning. But most of central Georgia is still going to continue about that routine schedule, as we've really had minimal impacts from the wintry weather compared to areas up in northern Georgia. So we kind of dodged one bullet already. Let's see if we can dodge another as we go into this afternoon and into tomorrow morning as we get through phase 2 and phase 3 of this very intricate and complicated and complex forecast that your weather team is very, very tired of. But we're going to continue to keep you updated as long as the risk is there. And then as we go throughout the work week, It is going to be a calm work week. We'll see plenty of sunshine, but that sunshine is not going to correlate to some warmer temperatures. Highs in the 40s and lows down into the upper teens and the low 20s each and every day. As we go into the weekend, more cloud cover should be present, but we are still going to keep the very, very cold air in the forecast as we go into the closing weekend of January. And then we start to finally get into maybe at least this is going to be the last full work week of January, but then we'll start to transition into February at the end of this week. I believe that's right. Maybe I have my calendar dates mixed up. It's been a long last 48 hours and it's going to continue to be a long next 24 to maybe 36 hours. But like I said, 13 WMAZ weather team is staffed all throughout the rest of this weekend, and we will keep you updated if there is any weather that you need to immediately know about. Thanks for tuning in. We'll have another live update coming up at the top of the hour at 1 o'clock in just about 35 minutes.